Hey everybody, Lee from PcjunkieMods here. What I'm going to talk about today is I got some stuff from my buddy Mike from Lutro Customs, and I wanted to talk about some of the stuff that, well, first let me talk about Mike a little bit. So Mike's been in the computer industry for quite some time, I'm sure before me, and he's been doing sleeving for quite a long time now, and he takes pride in it. One of the things that I know that he's been doing is over this period of time he's been trying to find the best sleeving, the best tools to make a better sleeving experience and to get the best end result. So I know if you go to his website and stuff, you can, this is actually his crimp tool. This is one of the tools that I got from him. I'm looking for the other friggin' tool. I don't know where the hell it went in my mess here, but so here it is. And then I also picked up this tool. So anyways, so what he's done is he's taken the crimping tool and about every other crimping tool out there and compared them when crimping wires. Now I have the MDPC crimping tool, which I always thought was pretty good, but sometimes it clips off the sides of the wires, not the wires of the, I'm drawing a blank here, the Molex pins, or the ATX pins, sorry. So what happens is when, I know you probably can't see because it's not zoomed in, but you have the little prongs on the, oh, I'll bring it up close. So you have the little prongs on here, and what happens, see if my camera's going to zoom in here, autofocus, people. Anyways, you have these little ends here, and sometimes my other crimping tool would slice it off. So instead of it crimping around the wire, it would end up being sliced off there, and then the freaking wire would pull right out. So what I did do is when I opened the box yesterday, I went ahead and busted out the crimping tool, and I did do a wire. He also sent a couple samples with it, and this is the wire. This is actually for an ITX system. These are, I already have all the wires pre-cut for the 24 pin. So let me show you how good this tool is versus my, come on, autofocus. So it doesn't want to focus in here. If I put my hand in front of it, no? Oh well, anyways, so you see that it's crimped over the wire, which is pretty good. So this is one that I did with the MDPC, or the MDPC one, and as you can see, this top edge here actually cut it off. So now this wire would probably at some point pull out. It's in there pretty good. I'll probably leave it, but for the most part, usually if it cuts it off like that, I end up having to solder the wire. Now this way, I won't solder this wire because it's in there. It's not coming out. So I'm digging this tool. I'm excited to use it. And then also, so he's been striving to find those best tools, you know, and that has been his goal. Now he offers some tools on his website, some sleeving, some heat shrink, and some other stuff, and I know that with people like Mike out there, you know, especially for the sleeving world, he's going to make it better for that next person that comes along. He's got a lot of YouTube tutorials on how to do stuff. So, you know, even myself, sometimes I go and watch his videos because there's new methods that people try, and he's usually tried pretty much everything. So as far as the sleeving, so this here, so I got this tool, I got the crimping tool. This is a custom tool made by Lutro. This is very handy for the people who use heat shrink. So it's got 3 little notches in it. He actually has a tutorial video on how to use this. But basically what you do with it is you would slide it up to these, there's 2 little hooks on your Molex pin, or your ATX pin. So you would slide it up like this, and then what you'll do is when you put the sleeving on, you want to butt the sleeving up to the back side of it. Now, the reason there's 3 different cutouts here is it's basically your preference. So one guy might want to use this end one or the middle or the end. So you just figure out which one works for you. Then you would slide your sleeving all the way up to this, and then you would grab it, hold it, put the tool down, put your piece of heat shrink over it, and as long as your heat shrinks are all cut the same, all you would do is slide the heat shrink up to the hooks and then heat shrink it. And then every time you'd have the same consistency of heat shrink across. It'd be all nice and even and pretty. So this is a pretty handy tool, especially for, I've been doing a lot of heat shrinkless, you know, for per customer requests and stuff like that. But at least I have this now for when people do request with heat shrink. So I will be trying it out soon. This one will probably, I'm working on this system right now. Well, at least the power supply for this. So I'm going to be using, this is his stiff line sleeving. So I'm very excited to try and use this. It is very stiff, and it's very nice like that. Let me see if I have one that's, this is the blue that I'll be using here with the black. So I don't know, I've never tried it. It's very flexible and expandable, so that's good. It doesn't stretch out like the MDPC sleeving does, which can be good also because it's actually thinner. It's more true to the 1/4 inch. I think it's not 1/4, 1/8 inch size. I have here is some MDPC black. Just try to give you guys an idea here. I'll bring these 2 up to the camera so you can get a zoom in. If my damn camera will focus in. So as you can see, the MDPC is wider. It's actually flat though. Look at it. This is the Lutro stuff is real. It's round, completely round. So my guess is that the wire is going to fit perfect inside the Lutro's stiff line, and that's going to be very nice because I don't have to mess around with stretching it out or any of that stuff. I'm still going to have to pull on a little bit, but it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna. You're not gonna really pull on that. So I'm pretty sure that this will be the right size for the wire, for 18 gauge wire, and I'm really excited to try and use this. Hey everybody, so now that we went over some of the products, let me go ahead and I'm going to reach out to Mike Landenberger, which is Lutro Customs, and we are going to try to get him on Skype so we can have a little chat with him and see what's going on Mike there. Lutro Customs on the line right now. We're going to talk a little bit about his sleeving, and I actually got some stuff from him. I got the crimper. Got his nice little crimper here. I have a couple other crimpers. This one's proven to be the best so far out of those ones. Then I also got the LC tool. Maybe you want to talk about this, Mike, after I kind of go over what else I got sitting here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I also got some of his. Where's my camera?
Your camera's in front of you.
Yeah, I know. I got some of his ATX pins here. They work really good with this crimper. And then I got a couple different colors here. I've actually done some of the sleeving already with some of the colors. Here's the 2 different blues, the white and the black. And this is the stiff line sleeving. So I really, from my sleeving experience already, Mike, with what I have here, I used the dark blue and the black on a friend of mine's Elite 120 that we modded out. I really like it. I mean, it's not. I mean, it doesn't stretch like that MDPC stuff, but then again, it's not as big as MDPC's is really big. Mm-hmm. So it does stretch just enough over the wire to be what it needs to be.
Exactly.
So tell me about this guy. Where did you come up with this idea here?
That's the, I want to say, 3rd or 4th iteration of the LC sleeving tool. When I started getting into sleeving, and that was with the Cathros mod, I realized at that point in time that nobody was sharing how they would get really, really good straight heat shrink. And actually the first tool I ever made was made out of plastic that was, you know, that plastic bubble containers that they put, really thick plastic on that makes it really hard for you to get stuff out of
Yeah.
sold goods. I actually cut one out and I found the right diameter or the right length that goes from the very tip of the crimp, which is the two prongs that go up all the way back. And if you put that on the wire,
Like
it'll
this.
show you. Yep, and there's three different ones, and I'll explain those in a second. But it'll show you exactly where you need to put uh, your sleeve.
Right.
So when you put your sleeve on there, it'll show you exactly where it needs to be able to get a perfect and even heat shrink job as well as the sleeving. Uh, let me explain the holes first. The first one allows for you to put a little bit of the actual sleeving inside of the connector if it's melted right. If you've watched my video on the tool, you'll see that a little bit of the sleeving goes inside the connector. What that allows is that you have a very flush look coming from the connector so that
Talking
there's
about this
no.
one right here, right?
Yep, the first
Okay.
one. And there's no bump in between it. Now, you do need thin diameter 18 gauge wire for that to happen because if you use thick gauge, unlike the 18 and 16 gauge that I sell for heat shrinkless, I mean, think about it. You're already adding heat shrink, you're adding wire, you're adding a whole new, sleeving on top of that. That's a lot of room to try to fit in there. And if you get it right, then you should have a little bit of that plastic going inside of the connector. It takes a
Right.
lot of practice and a lot of work, but I've done a video guide on how to do it. Now, where the other holes or the other slots came from is some people like to use 16 gauge wire, and some people have a hard time getting the first one done. So I made three different slots for people to find out exactly where they want to put it. The last slot doesn't allow for the plastic to go all the way in, but it still allows you to have a perfect straight heat shrink job. If you go to my Facebook page, Lutro, facebook.com/Lutro Customs, and you look at my albums and you look at the MDPC heat shrink value, the album, then you'll be able to see how flush and how straight you can get it. And by using the top two prongs on the actual crimp as a guide for your heat shrink, and if your heat shrink is cut to either, MDPC has 15 millimeter uh, pre-cut heat shrink, which works awesome, or if you have a jig, which I'm going to actually be coming out with a fully adjustable jig here the second I get back from my surgery.
Can't wait.
And people are going to love that because you'll be able to cut your heat shrink exactly the way you want, whether it's SATA sleeve or SATA heat shrink or regular heat shrink. Uh, but that tool allows for heat shrink style, perfect results every time. You don't have to waste very much time doing it right. In fact, when I was at the Modders meetup in Minneapolis with Bill Owen, when he had the meetup, Midwestern Modders meetup, people loved that, and I got to show them the tool, and they're all like, "We need to have one of these."
Yeah.
Because if you've ever tried to do it without having that tool, it's impossible to get even. It's impossible to get straight. It's a guessing game. You're using magic marker to try to get everything straight, and it's just a pain in the butt. And if you've seen a good sleeving job like psychosleeve.com, his name is Martin. Martin does an awesome job. In fact, I will even go so far as to say he does a better job than me when it comes to heat shrinkless or heat shrink, because he has that down, and I'm sure he uses something very, similar to what I have. But it's all completely flush. He puts a little bit of the plastic of the sleeve inside of the connector, so it's a good transition. And that's why people are on the fence between heat shrinkless and heat shrink, is because heat shrink allows for kind of a transition down into the sleeve. Heat shrinkless just goes straight, and some people love it and some people don't. But that was the basis behind the tool, because when I first started out, I didn't I didn't know about heat shrinkless. I haven't, I
Okay.
didn't,
I
I wasn't ever the inventor of it, but
Yeah.
I was the first one to sell it. So I found out that it was a lot easier and
Yeah, well, the hardest part is the melting part, melting the ends, and
exactly.
I went and bought some gloves for that, so it's tired of burning my finger. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so I mean, you were telling me that you're going to be coming out with some more, maybe some more colors for this, or is it just new sleeving period that you're going to be coming
I
out with?
I think I will maybe come out with some more colors in stiff line. Honestly, stiff line was the test to try to see, if people liked the denser weave. Um, and it's a really thick material. It's really industrial feeling.
Yeah.
And I wanted people to buy a sleeving that felt like it was as strong and tough, and that it was worth the money. Um, the problem with buying sleeve and making your own custom colors is most manufacturers want you to buy a lot of it. Especially, I mean, we're talking kilograms of plastic, especially when you're having custom colors.
Right.
So I went through TechFlex, which is a very well-known U.S. manufacturer and reseller of sleeving, to make the stiff line sleeving, and I used their base colors and I honestly didn't expect for there to be such a positive result. I knew it was a good sleeving, but a lot of people love it, so I very well might make some more colors in the stiff line. But I believe with the Teleo sleeving, which is going to be our flagship sleeving, and we'll have about 11 colors coming out starting. It'll be very, very similar in denseness to the stiff line, but you'll be able to use it in both heat shrink and heat shrinkless style. I think that most people will jump over to using the Teleos, and then once the stiff line runs out of stock, then I think it'll just be done. When it comes to density, people are looking for a sleeve that is super dense, which means that you can't see the color of the wires underneath. Now, instead of, being able to uh, make custom wires, which everybody can't do because it costs a lot to do, if you get a dense enough sleeving, then you can cover up the ugly normal colors that
Right.
a power supply has. Well, the Telios sleeving is built up to be that way. Also, the Telios sleeving is made to match motherboard components perfectly. And when somebody is sleeving, what are they trying to do? They're trying to match the motherboard or their components so that you get kind of a feng shui look inside of your computer, so everything, flows perfectly. It's kind of like interior designing, but not for your house, but for your computer.
Right.
And everybody is made off colors up until the Teleos now. Now, the Teleos sleeving will be matched up perfectly to the Gigabyte green, the ROG red, and we'll be doing some off colors because people like to, have a little bit of an off color to use as an accent as well. So the stiff line probably not gonna, make new colors because the Telios is what I'm really gonna be
Okay.
focusing on, and it's been a very long time in development. I hoped to have started my store with the Telio sleeving, but I wasn't happy with the many, many, many different, iterations that I got from different companies until I finally settled on a company that I was happy with that would follow my exact specifications because there's so much that goes into a sleeve. MDPC is it's a triple braid. It expands a lot, but the density is around a 9 or so. Well, the Teleo sleeve and the stiff line sleeve has a density of like 12 to 16, which means that, like you said, it doesn't stretch very well and it
Yep.
doesn't expand very well. But at the same time, when you use that with the custom wire that I made, it hugs the wire perfectly, making, there's a misconception that having stiff wires is a bad idea, and that's completely false because you want stiff wires that you can train that will stay where they are without having to sew and without having to use combs.
Right. That makes sense. Cool. Well, I mean, so far, I mean, well, from what I've used, let me grab something real quick, and I'll just do. I have some red wire right here.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of gives these people an idea, because I actually checked this too. You know, one of the things that I did was I actually took this and put. I'm pretty sure it was your sleeving that I actually put. And when you pull on it, you really can't see. There's a wire in there, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really see. That's what he means by the density. You know, I've had some sleeving that you put this over it and the red bleeds right through it. And you know, just like I know,
Absolutely.
Mike, that non-good sleeving, in you better have the right color wire underneath. If you're doing white, you better use white wire, because
Absolutely.
it just
Uh,
doesn't work.
Yeah, and even with the high density on the stiff line sleeving, I do still suggest that you use white underneath of it. Not because it'll show through, because any kind of sleeving, no matter how dense it is, it's still going to show through a little bit. And if you really want the white to pop,
Yeah.
you'll want to use white wire
Right.
underneath, and it's really easy to do even on a non-modular power supply. I mean, let's just be honest. If you want to do a top-notch perfecto job on sleeving on a non-modular power supply, you're going to want to open it up. You're going to want to sleeve all the way to the end of the end of the road as far as you can go up inside of the power supply. But if you have white, or if white's part of your sleeving idea, you're going to want to snip those wires on the inside and resolder on the inside so that you have white wire. Nothing beats using white wire with white sleeving, just because it makes it super bright. But
Yeah.
like you said, if you don't have the time or the patience or the skills to do so, you can put that white sleeving over it, and it'll cover it, about 95%.
Yeah.
Uh, and it might tint it a little bit, but most people won't even be able to notice.
No, not you know, it's just like me and you. You know, we know our imperfections, and when I do a build, I know there's a nick here, a nick there. But if
Hmm.
I show it to you, you might not see it because you're not looking for all that fine, tiny speck of scratch,
Exactly.
whatever, you know.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, so I mean, I'm really impressed with this sleeving, and I'm looking forward to the new sleeving. Is there something else we should go over here? What do you think?
We can go over that crimper.
Okay.
The crimper is exactly the same as the MDPC. We both buy it from the same company. It's not a, uh, we don't have to sit there and buy from, a bunch of different manufacturers and put it together ourselves. Just by dumb luck, I was able to find the same manufacturer that sells them. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because anybody who's ever crimped a lot of wires knows that the MDPC reigns king. And so I didn't want to try to find some cheap, you know, uh,
Cool.
knockoff of the
Yeah.
same thing. I wanted to find the right one, and then I wanted to put my own special touches on it. Now, if you look on my page on Lutro0customs.com and you look up the crimper page, you will see that I have about 15 different crimpers on there, because when I did all the research before I opened up my store, I purposely went out and didn't really waste money, but I spent a lot of money on buying crimpers that I knew weren't the best, but I wanted to try to compare them to try to find the cheapest solution, and at the same time find the best tool for the modders and the sleevers out there. My prices are low because I did a lot of research and I looked everywhere to try to find the best quality components that I could find, but have the cheapest prices to provide for everybody too. Because sleeving, I mean, if you're modding a computer or just doing a building, we already know that it's crazy expensive to do that. Why add so much more price on top of sleeving when honestly sleeving is becoming or has already became it's when you're doing a modder build, it's a sore thumb not to have it sleeved.
Yeah.
It's just a standard now, and I believe it to be the standard for a very long time. I don't ever think that it's going to not become a standard. And that's why all the power manufacturers have been trying, do pre-sleeved cables, and they just suck.
Yeah.
Because it's all factory made. There's no special touch to it, and they're just trying to crank them out.
Some
Um,
machine made it. Yeah.
huh?
Some machine made it.
Exactly. But with that crimper, I do a little bit more than I think Nils does on them. I sell 18 gauge or I sell 16 gauge wire, um, and Nils crimper kind of crushes it a little bit if you try to use
Yeah.
his on there because he focuses on 18 gauge wire. And that's not to say his is worse or bad or anything of the sort, but my crimper is milled individually, and then I test the crud out of it. And I only leave a couple
You see that?
test nubbins in there. But yeah, if you look at the bottom jaw, you'll see that it's metal, and that's because I've put it through a metal mill to make sure that it crimps 18 gauge wire without snapping off any ends, and it'll do a perfect bite on the crimp. Now, if you've watched my crimp guide, you'll realize that that first crimp that has the bite into the wire isn't what's holding, the wire
The crimp.
into the actual terminal,
Yeah.
and it's never meant to be like that. The outside crimp that does the bite, that's supposed to be your stress relief. So if you're moving it around a lot, that's supposed to keep the pressure off of the actual crimp, which is where the wire is actually hitting the terminal. And I sell a,
So
oh, go ahead,
you're referring to this one's the one, the stress relief here, and
the
that's
long
where it makes the
wings.
contact here.
Yes.
Because
And all,
I,
oh, go ahead.
I've noticed that if this is all messed up, because like you're saying, sometimes you crimp and it slices off an edge.
Mm-hmm.
With the other, the cheaper crimpers or whatever, um, I end up just pulling the wire right out pretty much because this
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have enough pressure on the wire to hold it in there. So, but yeah,
Exactly.
this is one that I just crimped a minute ago. You guys saw that. So, anyways,
But yeah, they're milled so that it can use 16 gauge wire and thicker insulation, but it can also do thinner insulation too, and it has that bite. More importantly, it's specifically set so that it does that inner crimp the best. It's made to really hold onto that wire. You'd end up slicing your fingers off before you'd be able to pull that crimp off because they're sharp and everything. And same with the terminals that I sell. Uh, all of the ATX male and female I get directly from Molex, simply because all of the OEM third-party ones they suck. They use a thinner metal, they use really short wings, and they just if you resell them or you buy them from a reseller, they cost too much. And then they sell the long wings as supposedly being, for double wires, which isn't the case at all. Um, but they're made for the perfect crimp, and Molex did it right. All of my other terminals that I sell, some of them have shorter wings on them, which doesn't affect anything, but it allows me to sell them at a cheaper price. But when it comes to the ATX female ones, which is what people are going to use the most, I don't mess around. I just get the right ones the first time.
so here's yours. Here's that aftermarket.
Yeah, and all of the aftermarket ones are going to have the short wings.
Yeah,
I've never seen an aftermarket one made with long wings.
the only ones I have bought some actual Molex ones and they were like that. Yeah.
Yep, that's because they're I buy them straight from Molex, and I buy a lot of them at a time, so I can give you guys a cheaper price.
Right.
I mean, there's some sites out there that sell 4 of them for $1. And
It's expensive.
yeah. I mean, come on, you're gonna be using a bunch of those if you're doing custom wires.
Yeah.
So I try to offer the cheapest I can.
Yeah.
And you already took those off of the reel, right?
Yeah, they come. So these obviously will come. For the people that don't know, that have never done this, these actually come installed on a wire. It's actually like not really a wire, but just picture this piece being that wire. So they're attached like so, and they're staggered, and you just break them off. I usually
Yep.
grab 2 at a time and snap them off, and then
Yep. They come right off.
yeah, it'll be a big reel like you're saying.
And the reason I buy them in a reel is because it's cheaper to get them in a reel. It's easier to ship them in a reel because when you put them in a bag like that and you try to ship it, some of them are going to get damaged.
Oh yeah.
And every once in a while, some of them might get damaged when I ship them, but I always make sure that I send, new ones if that ever happens. So,
Right.
because people buy per crimp, I mean, they're spending money on each and every single one of them, so I want them to get their money's worth. Um, and that would be my wife calling me, and I'll just decline. I'm sending her a message. Uh, anyway, but yeah, I try to make everything that I sell is custom. Everything that I buy, I try to make sure that is the best supply for sleevers. And that does sometimes mean it does cost a little bit more. But I like to say that my prices are cheaper than pretty much anywhere else that you can get your hands on stuff. And I try to make I sell a lot of international packages. And I try to make the shipping as very cheap as I possibly can. Upcoming here, I will be re-weighing everything and seeing if I can offer a cheaper shipping solution too. So we may be using UPS or FedEx coming up here.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, because I mean, you've been in the sleeving department, community, however you want to call it, for quite some time. I mean, before I started modding, so I've heard your name and stuff like that. I know we've been buddies now for a little while, but I mean, prior to me getting into modding, you were already doing this. So I mean, pretty much your goal has been to find the best stuff to make the new guys' experience a lot easier. Am I correct?
Exactly. Yep. When I started in on sleeving, like I said, my first sleeving adventure was the Kathros mod, which I was very humbled to get mod of the month on OCN on my very first mod, which is, really unheard of to do that well on your first one. But I have a really bad case of OCD, so that helps a lot when you're a modder.
Right.
Um, but like I said, nobody was sharing. Nobody was sharing the information that was needed to do a good sleeving job. So I dove in head first. I bought heat shrink from everywhere. I bought sleeving from everywhere. I tried everything. I tried bunches of different methods. I really just sat and honed my skills before I got in it. Now that I look back on the Kathros mod, the sleeving on it really sucks in my eyes because I've gotten so much better since then. Um, but like I said, nobody was ever sharing anything, so I decided one day that I was going to start video guides.
Right.
And I started doing video guides at the same time I started selling heat shrinkless extensions, which nobody was doing at that time. And everybody freaked out over the whole heat shrinkless thing. It became really popular, which was awesome to kind of give birth to, an idea of sorts. And, like I said, I wasn't the one that invented heat shrinkless sleeving, but I definitely did hone it down to an art, and I shared it. I wanted people to know how to do it properly, and the whole venture, even after starting the store, was to help out new modders, to help out new sleevers, to be able to get into the hobby, because it's a very fun hobby once you know how to do it, and you have the right tools, which has always been my mantra, to have the knowledge, the patience, and the right tools to do the job. And if you mess up in one of those categories, then you're going to hate sleeving. But if you have the right materials to do it, you're going to love it because it's just going to be so much easier. And that's always been my goal, is to help people get into sleeving. And I still do custom jobs all the time. But my goal is to have people do it themselves, because uh, there's a feeling that you get when you step back from your system and you realize, wow, I did this with my own hands,
Yeah.
and you just get that feeling of accomplishment.
Yep. Makes a big difference, especially when, yeah, you can stand back and, look at something, whether you're working on a piece of wood or you're working on that car over there or whatever,
Hmm.
it's a sense of accomplishment in the end, and it always feels good.
Exactly.
But
So
anyway, so
what else do you got there that we can look at?
well, we got just the colors. I mean, That's all I got right now. I think that's. I mean, I got a T-shirt from you too. Should we talk about?
Yeah, I saw you wear that another one. I shared that on my Facebook wall, and I'm like, ah, nice shirt.
Yeah. So I mean, I got these. I got the shirt. I've been sporting the shirt. Actually, yeah, I think it was in one of my videos or two of them. I'm not sure, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's all I. Oh no, I did get. Didn't I get some? Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yep, not a problem.
I did get something else. Didn't I buy this from you?
Yeah, that's the heat shrink that I sell for heat shrinkless.
Okay. Yeah. So, and it works pretty good because it doesn't like burn. Because this is for heat shrinkless, you're gonna burn. You're gonna burn it, and I've had some stuff actually just go up in flames and be gone. You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So this
Uh,
actually will burn down, shrink real good, and you get it nice and mushy, and then swoop
yep,
it.
exactly. Like I said, everything that you do with sleeving, every supply that you get has a purpose, and if one of them's off, then you have a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Uh, I sell those in 4 foot lengths, which you have right there, and you can cut a just I think you can get about 100 to 150 different little cuts off of there. You don't need them to be really long, but you do need a heat shrink that is kind of, heat resistant because when you use plastic type sleeving, uh, you're going to want to use heat shrink because what that does is allow it to tack on perfectly uh, right above the wings, the first stress reliever crimp that we were talking about. And that makes that wire stronger than ever. You'll have to use a pliers to rip that apart because not only now do you have a really good crimp on there, but now you have plastic that's melted on there and made a good tack.
Yeah.
Paracord, you don't need to use heat shrink. You don't need to use heat shrink because you should be able to pat it down with your fingers. But you're patting them both down with your fingers, both heat shrink or heat shrinkless with the paracord and with the stiff line, because you're trying to make a cone. Now, you use gloves, and a lot of people are going to want to use gloves too. I like to have a tactile feel. That, and I have calluses that are gigantic on my sleeving fingers. But it took me a very long time to find out. That's nice.
Yeah, it was brand new. You know, I bought these about a week ago. Did one job, and that finger's already. Anyways,
Hmm.
go on.
Melted
Sorry.
off a little bit. Uh, but you're gonna want to really work on it. And then, like I said, I got calluses, so if you're just careful and you take your time, you won't burn yourself half as much. But it took me a long time to find that heat shrink that is cheap, because 3-to-1 heat shrink, the price difference between 3-to-1 and 4-to-1 is huge. I mean, the cost change is just massive. So I wanted to try to find a 3-to-1 that was heat resistant, that didn't turn into exact just full on mush, that didn't go up into flames, that you could really, heat it up and do it properly. And if you've
Yeah.
seen my videos, you'll see that you do want it to bubble a little bit, but you do want to snip it off as well. And then it doesn't leave a lot of residue behind. There's so much heat shrink on the market nowadays that it literally expands. Like uh, I don't even know how to explain it, but it like bubbles the whole thing up and it just looks like crap. And so to find a heat shrink that I could sell in 4 foot lengths that I could sell for as cheap as I can took a while. And it's the same heat shrink I use on my heat shrinkless jobs. I do have more heat shrink out now. I have a smaller diameter heat shrink that you can use on both paracord and uh, on the stiff line if you use a smaller diameter wire. Um, and then I have a heat shrink that is for SATA. I have a heat shrink that is for doing bundled sleeving, which means it's just big enough to go over every connector. And then you can do full bundle type sleeving, which means you can just put a single piece of sleeve over all the wires, and then instead of individually sleeving them, then you can just do it that way. So,
Well, you got a lot of different options there.
oh, yep, always adding new products. I try my best to cover all bases as much as I possibly can, and I do have SATA sleeve that should match uh, the stiff line sleeving coming out here soon. But when the Teleo sleeving comes out, I will have perfectly matching SATA heat shrink or SATA sleeve to go with that.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely have to like get in some video chat with you in the future to learn how to do the SATAs, or maybe I need to start watching some videos because I know that my biggest problem. I mean, I've done a few power supplies. You know, my biggest problem is usually like when there's a jumper somewhere. Like if I'm doing a SATA, you know,
Mm.
SATA plug, and I want to keep everything intact, or I move them around or whatever. You know, I end up putting a heat shrink, but I don't run the sleeve all the way through because I have those the ones that you were telling me are a pain in the butt.
Hmm.
You know, so
Well, I mean, you're talking about capacitors, right?
um, no, for let me grab the connector. No, not with the capacitors. If anything that has a capacitor, I cut it off. All right, right
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can. The only power supply company that I wouldn't cut them off on is OCZ, simply because they use a billion of them, and they do that so that they can, hit the standard,
Yeah,
so they can have gold standard or silver standard or whatever. But the ones like Silverstone, you can remove those easily, and it won't hurt anything at all.
yeah, I just recently did that. So, but uh, but yeah, no, like that guy.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions on when I'm going to do a guide for those. If you go to my FAQ on OCN, which is linked to in my store, there's just so many different types of methods that I've seen people do. Uh, I personally, it depends on the method, depending on how many I have to do.
Yeah,
It's very, very hard to get a very clean look on those, simply because A, you're putting a wire through it, B, sometimes you're putting a sleeve through it as well, but you want to have a good connection. And the more of those that you have
in
in line, the more that you're having to get each and every single one of those individual pieces of sleeve perfectly.
yeah,
So what I try to do is I sell a crimp style SATA power. And what I will always tell people to do is, if their power supply allows it, to go ahead and do single lines, like a single line to one peripheral or one hard drive, as many times as you can. Let's say you have 3 devices, and we were just talking about this a little bit ago. I would say, if you can, do a single line to each one of those,
right.
and use the crimp style with the crimp terminals that I have, because you can use heat shrinkless perfectly, and it doesn't cause a mess. Yes, you have more cables to deal with. Yes, you have more cables to route, but it doesn't look bad. Like I've only seen personally 3 different jobs of using inline connectors done right. And it takes them a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience, and it's just really hard. And that's why I haven't done a video on it yet, is because whenever I make a video, I want to show a method that's easy and that everybody can do. Uh, but even when I do OEM sleeving for people, I always try to get them to do the crimp style ones.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I've always stayed away from those ones. So I
Yeah,
like
they're a pain in the
these
butt.
ones are easy to change out, you know, and move around. So that's why I've always messed with those. I've even thought about maybe taking, like, let's say you have one SATA plug come out of the power supply. I've been doing this with the PCI Express too, and go up about 4 or 5 inches and split.
Hmm.
You know? So because then in the end you have a nice clean plug-in and everything
Exactly.
is heat shrinkless, especially if I'm doing heat shrinkless. You know, I'll have a piece of heat shrink where I split your wires at, but for the most
Hmm.
part, the rest looks clean. So,
Exactly. And when you have double wires and whatnot, you're always going to want to do a split. And I did a video on how to exactly make a split perfectly. It takes a little time, but you can hide that split somewhere.
yeah, behind,
There's always a place where you can hide it. And so basically what it's doing is, 2 wires should never have to be shoved into one connector. The reason why it looks bad when you do that is because when you do that, you're bulging out that connector. You should have a perfectly straight, perfectly even, and a clean end connector, both on your power supply side and on your end side. So if you make the split somewhere where it's hidden, not only can you have a perfect looking power supply side, but a perfect looking, end
both
side.
sides. Yeah,
And yep. And so splitting wires is, yep, you have to use a little heat shrink, but if you do a really good job on it and you follow my guide, you'll make them really even, you'll make it clean, and it'll look like it's supposed to be there. I have seen so many jobs where they do split wires and they just look like crud. And or I've seen people, I think Mod DIY tries to shove
Two wires.
two wires into one. Yeah, it just looks bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're not going to be able to get the proper stress relief and the sleeving that you want when you do that.
No, you won't. So, what do you want to do here? Because we are pushing 40 right now.
Which is, I always kind of make a joke whenever I do my guides that, this is quick and easy, and then it takes, that's Mrs. Lutro in the background.
Hello.
Um, Say hi. Hi. And so yeah, that's pretty much about it. I do my best to try to give the best products I can, and I answer as many questions as I can. I don't frequent too many forums, especially with having the shop open nowadays. But yeah, that's it. If you guys ever have any questions, I try to answer them. I mean, you can ask me through the info, the contact on my site, Lutro0customs.com, or Facebook, or even YouTube, or on OCN. But yeah, the joke has always been that I try to make really short videos, and they're never really short.
No,
They're really long.
I've tried to. Most of my videos, I've kept them down right around 20 because to hold the audience's attention and stuff. But so what I'll do is I'll in this video I'll post some links and stuff so to your website, your
Hmm.
Facebook, your YouTube, and all that stuff. Because I think I already recommended your Facebook or your YouTube on my. Well, I'm subbed, so I don't know. Whatever. But we'll get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lee, I've saw a lot of your work, and you do an excellent job for what you do, man.
You.
People love your modded systems, and like you were talking to me earlier, if, to have some Lutro custom perfect sleeving inside of your systems is only going to make things look a lot nicer. And
Yeah.
I know that you personally hate sleeving, so and that's kind of what I do. So
Yeah. So I think here in the near future I'll be sending you some of my business. I'll just start shooting you the power splice because I don't want to do it anymore. I don't even want to do mine. So
yeah, oh, I hear you.
and my wife was looking at some purple I had, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to do it. You do it. And she's like, I don't know how to do it. But anyway, well, thanks for joining me here on this quick overview of your products and stuff. And hopefully I'll be getting some more. Maybe we can do some more chatting and put it back up on YouTube. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
all right.
Yep, thanks for your time, and yeah, man, I look forward to your new projects coming, and like I said, it's gonna be nice to see some Lutro customs, custom sleeving inside of your systems,
Yeah.
and you do a great job, man. More people should buy from you. You video all your work, which is awesome because most people do it in a dark corner in their basement, and it should be shown because the more you show people what you're doing, the more up and coming modders are going to have a chance to do the same thing.
It's just like if it's going to help the next guy, that's my goal, just like your goal. Your goal with all this equipment that you have on your site and your YouTube, your tutorials is to help the new guy. So
Absolutely.
cool. Well, thanks for joining.